We're live 1 second before the clock strikes 4:31. We're good to go. We're good to go. Just as the Texans are good to go. Thanks to BetUS for sponsoring this video. A lot of really good things last night. I was excited about a lot of it. I'm still concerned about a few things. So we'll listen to the DeMeco Ryans press conference. But along the way, I have a cut up of Jalen Pitre that I want to watch and just point out the areas where he is definitely improved, regardless of how, well he plays during the season or, how that all ends up looking. He's improved on some of the very fundamentals of some of the things he needs to do. And it's really cool to see. So the first answer I'm going to play for you from DeMeco's press conference, I just took 5 of them, was when he was asked specifically about Derek Stingley and Jalen Pitre.
Done a great job. That's who Jalen has been since I first got here. Jalen brings great energy. He's one of our smartest football players on our team. He's a leader. He's everything you want, in a player. And he brings it all. So, and I'm fired up to continue to see him get more, make more plays. Like he's fun to watch. He's exciting. He provides energy to our entire team. So Jalen has done an outstanding job.
Yeah, look, he's always, as I just tweeted out a little bit ago, he's always been composed of the right stuff. Like he's everything you want in terms of energy and love for football and everything else like that. I think 2 things just needed to happen. 1, he needed to be in the right role, and 2, he just needed to kind of like Will Anderson. And obviously Will Anderson is just fine, but they're both high energy guys, and sometimes you got to figure out a way to tamp that down. Now, Will Anderson plays in a defense where he is encouraged to just let loose and pin his ears back and go, and you got to refine that a little bit. Jalen was playing safety where it was, as I've told you guys many times, it was more about the psychology of the situation than it was the intelligence or anything like that. There's a difference between intelligence and judgment, and some of Jalen's youthful exuberance, I think, sometimes did him harm as a safety because he would just get too aggressive, or he'd sometimes there were mistakes that he made where I felt like he was trying to play like a veteran, but he didn't have the acumen yet to do that. But if we watch the plays he made last night, which I forgot to pull up here, let's see. There we go. Okay. So this obviously, if we start right at the very beginning, he's, to be clear, I hear some people call him a slot corner. That was what I was worried he was going to be because they've experimented with that in practice. I think there might be times, but if you're a slot corner, he'd be charged a lot more with being in man coverage or on wide receivers or what have you. Here, he's a nickel linebacker. He's when they're in base, he's playing safety most of the time, at least in games so far. It's basically like he's a linebacker. And there's nothing necessarily magnificent about Jalen on this play other than his awareness. And if you watch, for one, that context, because Daniel Jones idiotically didn't throw the ball, I think it would have been timed up all right if Daniel Jones had thrown the ball. But if you watch look at the intended receiver is out to lunch on it. Like Jalen stays aware and stays conscientious. And it sounds like a silly thing, but it's that little amount of alertness that ends up making a big difference over and over again in a football game. I mean, the receiver could have caught that ball. John Harris was so disgusted with Daniel Harris, as he should have been. This as a blitzer. So again, the role is as important as also Jalen working on his maturity and working on his football acumen and all that. But him up near the line of scrimmage, it's going to pay good dividends. So here he is. He's doing something. He is creeping a little too early. You can offset that by sugaring and stuff, but like good quarterbacks are going to figure it out. Daniel Jones isn't a good quarterback, but aside from all that, like this looks like no big deal, right? Okay, the running back was dead to rights. I can see a world in which previous Jalen Pitre would have just come hell bent for leather and tried to specifically tackle Daniel Jones or something else, but watch him settle down. Like it's literally settling down. The for him, it's twofold. It's not just settling in for the tackle, but he's doing this consistently, and then he gets his arms out wide. it was really cool to see because he's obviously really working at the tackling. 2 years ago when he set that record for rookie tackles, he also set a record for missed tackles, and it showed up last year. It was more of a problem when you're on a competitive team and you start looking at the things that are hurting you as well as helping you instead of just realizing that everything sucks. So right there, his arms out wide. It was really good. And then this next one, just in talking about judgment and technique and intelligence. So here he is again, that nickel linebacker role. Calm, carries his guy, sees his guy in the flat, and then comes up, and then A, settles in, and then B, this is going to sound like a silly one, but like this is exactly the situation where in the last couple of years guys started utilizing the hip drop tackle. Like if you're kind of behind the ball carrier, you're not sure if you're going to be able to get him down and drive him or whatever. So like honestly, the hip drop tackle disgusted me because it was quitting on making a quality tackle. You can't hip drop anymore. So what do? Like you wrap up and you keep your legs driving. And he actually also did the old, okay, secure the tackle first. It feels pretty good there. This is more like Greco-Roman wrestling than anything. And then he started trying to strip the ball, figuring that the swarm was coming. So, yeah, as John Harris said, tackling in open space is one of the hardest things in football, and he's really settled into it. So I'm very encouraged by Jalen Pitre. That was good stuff. That was good stuff by Jalen, and it's good stuff by DeMeco. If you likewise were discouraged as a Giants fan, if you're some sicko that's on here watching this Texans stream because you're so miserable right now, look, Malik Neighbors looked really good. He looked really good. As bad as Daniel Jones is, as I said last night, I think that Malik Neighbors has the ability to prop Daniel Jones up enough for a couple years that Daniel Jones gets a third contract. And then Malik Neighbors heads off to Philadelphia. At BetUS, you can get 125% bonuses on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Check the link below. Next question for DeMeco was about John Metchie.
I think he did a really, really nice job today, just catching the football, making some big time plays for us, and pulling for him to do well. And he did a really nice job today, and that's why I think you play the preseason games. That's why you have training camp practices, is to see guys continue to grow, get better, and shine when the opportunity comes. And Metchie had a really nice day today.
So my thumbnail for this live stream was going to be the same picture, but it was going to say DeMeco is legal HGH. But then people get so sensitive about this stuff. And what with the Denico Autry situation and everything, I felt like that might not, sometimes people don't get my sense of humor. But I'll say it on here because you guys all do. And I also think that, like, what I mean by that is the growth part of it. Like, that is, DeMeco very much looks at his role as a coach as being a teacher. And John Metchie, how I feel about John Metchie, and everybody else does. You're pulling for him, but man, he's had all these drops in training camp. He hasn't looked like fully integrated in the offense. Last night was really good. He ends up getting, was it 6 receptions, and sure-handed on all but one of them where he kind of double tapped it. But I hope that's a sign of things to come and that he's feeling comfortable, and that after not having really been physically right at all for the last 2 years because of his battle with cancer, that he can start coming into his own. But that's where the patience side of it with DeMeco, I think, is, that constantly chipping away, getting 0.1% better every single day. It pays dividends. We'll talk about Damian Pierce in a little bit, but that's the other side of it, is exactly, how patient do you have to be with a guy? Do you go full Jose Abreu level on somebody before they capsize on you? One more positive before I get to the areas of concern. The defense and creating turnovers. 5 turnovers last night. Very, very good. And like what I was hoping to see more of last year, now it starts to look like they're really getting a feel for just playing DeMeco's style of defense.
And defensively, one thing we harp on is attacking the football. And for us to go out today and take the ball away 5 times, that's big time. Anytime you can do that, you're gonna win the football game. So it was exciting. That's what we talk about it so much, and actually see it come to life. Like, it's it's confirmation for us and our coaching points and what we ask guys to do.
Yeah, and the coaching points, the confirmation, the fact that it takes time, all that drill work. I mean, Max Tooley came in there with the hammer of Thor. It was beautiful, and Lonnie Johnson was there on the spot to recover it. I think Lonnie's matured a lot since his first go around with the Texans, but Neville Hewitt, like Neville Hewitt, I don't look at PFF grades like the Bible or anything, but they're a good guide to look at and get a feel for things. But Neville Hewitt, it matches the eyeball test. His run grade is like, I think it might be the best on the team. Pass coverage, not so much. So Neville Hewitt has a role in a spot. Mostly it's just the guy that comes in and swings a hammer at people's heads. He's like Russell Crowe in LA Confidential. He's the guy that does what nobody else feels comfortable doing. He just kind of relishes that role, I think. And Derek Stingley, he's in a different boat than Jalen Pitre, obviously. Derek Stingley was already really good last year when he was healthy, but he's just got almost like supernatural ball skills. I don't know if Daniel Jones was thinking he was going to throw back shoulder or something on that, but Derek Stingley had done a real good job, as John Harris pointed out on the broadcast, of using the sideline as his extra defender and squeezing that cushion. When you got to practice, sometimes some teams will have a little red hash marks a few yards off of the sideline. That's a marker for receivers to be conscious of, like trying to create some space for yourself. So when the quarterback throws the ball, you've got room to work with. And he didn't really have room to work with there because Derek Stingley had squeezed him. That was really nice to see. So the opportunistic defense where you've got a pass rush that's fearsome up front. If Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson are out there, especially, I saw one of you credit Derek Barnett for Petry's interception. Yes. Derek Barnett has just been a huge find. He was a forgotten man in Philadelphia, and he's just been rejuvenated and reborn here. It's been really cool. So enough of the gushing, enough of the positivity. I'm not freaking out about this, but I'm getting a little bit nervous about it. The red zone. So DeMeco, let me just be sure this is the next one. Oh no, first we talk about the running. Let's freak out about the running first. And it's like there's only one thing to freak out about with the running, but here's DeMeco asked about the running game.
We ran the ball really well today. I think our offensive line did a great job of. When we look at the preseason, whoever is out there, that's the evaluation, right? We can't evaluate guys who aren't out there, but overall, the way our offensive line ran off the ball, the way they moved people and created lanes for our backs, like you run the ball as a team, right? O-line, everybody knows the O-line, but it's how your receivers are blocking, are we finishing attached to the defenders and finishing the play, and we did a good job of that today.
Yeah, I mean, he just started off saying we ran the ball really well. Like British Brooks looked awesome. Cam Akers had a really nice cutback. Like that's textbook cutting back against the grain. The Damian didn't look so hot, and it's complicated. I wish honestly that Damian had some opportunities to go with the twos and the threes just to get a good gauge of, all right, how much of it is that the backup offensive line versus other teams' backups are doing a good job, and how much of it is just that there's times where it's a muddled mess in front of Damian. There's other times where he needs to make his read quicker and get going. But the 1 yard per carry in the preseason, when added to last year, you always have to look at and say, all right, 1 yard per carry for the running back is almost never just the offensive line's fault. There's too many good running backs that will still squeak out 3+ yards per carry. And it's disappointing and it's bad, and you can blame it on the offensive line. But 1 yard per carry, when it looks like Damian is just still too tentative, especially in situations like on the goal line, it looks like he's trying to make up his mind when they're backed up on the goal line. When, man, you cannot get stuck in that position of almost giving up a safety. So my one little thought on this is that I still do think that maybe if he was in a simpler system where he didn't have to, he didn't have to think about everything pre-snap. He addressed that as one of the problems last year, was that there's just so much to process pre-snap in this offense that he might be better off. I mean, the Rams have actually transitioned into more of a gap running team, gap blocking team. So I don't know. I like, everybody loves them. I like, last night there were 3 questions about the rushing attack, and I felt like people just were kind of tiptoeing around the Damian Pierce conundrum. But these other guys are showing up. They just are. And maybe Damian, I honestly would prefer that he at least gets a chance to go against the twos, go against the threes, and see what it looks like. And maybe he stops putting so much pressure on himself. But it's getting kind of dicey. One quick comment here, because I don't want to leave this untalked about. Yeah, the Lonnie taking the ball. I didn't. All I could tell, that was in the shaft of sunlight, was it not? So I couldn't tell from that second replay whether the club did it or Lonnie did. So whatever the stat sheet shows, I apologize to Lonnie Johnson if it was actually him. It was just a magnificent club. And so I just you got to respect that club, but full credit to Lonnie Johnson if he did it. The red zone. So this goes hand in hand with the run game, but asked about going down on that first drive. Why did DeMeco go for it on 4th down?
Going for it early there. I mean, I didn't need to see Amy kick the chip shot there. I wanted our offense to punch the ball in, and that's why I went for it there. And let's see if we can, execute there in the red zone and make a play. That's why I went for it there. Offense did a great job of pushing the ball downfield, having a really successful drive, and I wanted to finish right in the end zone there. That's why I went for it.
Yeah, the best rushing attack in the red zone yesterday was Stephon Diggs. So that's why we signed him, to be our red zone rushing threat. I'm not criticizing them for doing it. It's that there were 2 wasted rushing attempts down there, and you get inside the 20, and when the run game's not a threat, aside from just not setting up the play action, you're not getting closer to the end zone, and you don't feel like you can hammer it in when you're right in the tight red zone. So those 2 things go hand in hand in terms of my biggest concerns. There's other little, I don't want to call them minor details. The run defense, until Christian Harris gets out there, I'm not going to feel awesome about it. I think Henry To'oTo'o has made a lot of progress. I think Alshire is just fine. And I think Jake Hansen is very good and versatile as a backup linebacker, but I don't think he needs to be out there with your, at least right now, I don't feel like he's the guy to be out there with your starting base defense. So I'd really like to see Christian Harris out there, but I'm not overly alarmed or worried about it, partly because this is a team, like, I don't want to call it bend, but don't break. There's going to be times where you give up runs. When you ask your defensive line to be as aggressive as they are, you're going to give up some seams at times, but you hopefully make up for it with tackles for a loss, cause turnovers, all those things, and then really good linebacker play. DeMeco's defense is one of the reasons they really thrived in San Francisco, was that they had 2 freakishly good linebackers, Fred Warner especially. But Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are both just really, really good and really versatile. And that makes everybody else look better. And it allows DeMeco to really do what he wants to do. So everything's riding on Christian Harris's mystery injury. Cam Akers faced the same defense as Damian because the Giants starters stayed out there longer than the Texans. Yeah, and look, there was one, it wasn't his really nice run. It was it was for positive yardage. Maybe I don't remember how many Cam got, but it was a really good example of just sticking his foot in the ground and getting upfield. And that's where it's hard sometimes, especially on the TV copy. I don't like to talk about Damian or the run game in general too much until I can see the end zone copy on the all 22. But in the zone run game, it looks murky at times. And sometimes it might look like nobody's getting blocked, but in fact, that seam is there. And Cam Akers knows when to hit that seam. And Damian right now just looks like he's really consciously thinking his way through it. It just doesn't come natural to him. I would say as a defensive tackle, an old school 3-4 defensive line, the defensive lineman, they have to 2-gap. And as a nose tackle, especially, you're waiting to see. You have to wait and see which way the center goes, and then you get to move your feet. And some guys just can't do it. It's really, really hard. It's something that some people, you either have it or you don't. Because you almost got to take your brain out of it. You got to look at your reads and all that other stuff. And then in that moment, take your brain out of it. And it looks like Damian's brain is still very much, he's up there in his frontal cortex where he needs to be back in his lizard brain at that point, just responding and reacting. Okay, Metchie, did he do enough to make the 53? Boy, man, it's gonna be tough. And I saw Damian had a quote, excuse me, I saw CJ had a quote about how like he couldn't believe that people were talking about how they might trade or might cut Metchie. I just, this is life in the NFL, man. It's tough right now when you start talking about guys that you really know you can rely on, like Woods, Xavier has entered that category for me, or at least he's close to it, and he's got upside. And Noah Brown when he's healthy, not to mention Skoranek and his special teams. It's going to be really dicey. There's going to be somebody that I think CJ. This is the downside of CJ forming personal relationships with everybody. He'll learn the cruelty of the NFL, which is that guys have to leave sometimes. So I don't know. I think there's multiple guys on this team. Case Keenum might be one of them that they might look at as, all right, we're going to put him on the practice squad and hopefully nobody comes and tries to sign him away. The rules of the practice squad are that you basically are a free agent. Once you're on the practice squad, any team can come in and offer you a deal. You don't have, as the team, you don't have right of first refusal, but there are a lot of times where it's, I don't know if it's wink, wink, or it's just, guy likes where he is and gives the team an opportunity and maybe sticks around. So with Case being where he is in his career at this point, I think that he might opt for, like, I think he might be cool with being on the practice squad, and then you can have a frank conversation with the Texans if something else arises elsewhere. But the Texans would lose an opportunity to trade him because Case is that veteran QB that's been in schemes, Kubshanistani schemes that are all over the place right now. He could be sought after with a quarterback injury. I mean, hell, Minnesota might spend 6 quarters with Sam Darnold and feel like it's Keenum time. I don't know. I owe my consciousness an apology for submitting it to so much frustration regarding Metchie. I see why he was noted on occasion by Stroud and the staff. He'll make the roster. I think, boy, it's tough. Oh yeah, everybody hit the like button and all that stuff, please. Elshire came in looking like a wildlife documentary, the ones when the male lion has to help put a water buffalo down. Oh, on the Jalen Pitre one. I can't. By the way, I recommend Alone. It's on Netflix now. I don't know where it airs, with the original seasons, but it's these survivalists that are up in northern Canada and they have to survive as long as they can. I'm only like 2 episodes into it. My wife tapped out because they show the cleaning of the animals and everything when they got to kill animals to survive, or just at least fish. But it's cool because it's not like Survivor or Naked and Afraid, or one of those where they put people out there where some of them claim to know what they're doing, but like most of them are just rank amateurs that don't know what the hell they're doing. These dudes and women, and they're pros. Like there's a season I'm watching, there's a guy that lives in a small little Inuit village in Alaska, and he's been living this life since he was a kid. It's badass. It's my new goal in life. To go on. I have to go to if any of you know an outdoor survival school that you can recommend, let me know. We already did the Cam Akers one. I always feel bad that I can't answer all your questions. I swear DP isn't even breaking tackles. What happened to that ability? It goes back to last year. He didn't break tackles with the same ferocity that he did the year before. I was skeptical of him slimming down last year, and then he trimmed up even more. I think, boy, if it were only that simple. If he could go to a scheme where it could be more gap scheme blocking, and he just got back to whatever his weight was his rookie year, it might be as simple as that. You look at some of the bigger running backs from back in the day. Ironhead Hayward, should he have slimmed down? Jerome Bettis, should he have slimmed down? I think Jerome Bettis, I know firsthand that Jerome Bettis probably was the perfect weight. We were beating the crap out of Pittsburgh one year. Then all of a sudden, Jerome Bettis broke off a 75-yarder after breaking like 4 tackles. I knocked Kevin Hardy off of a tackle. I tried to be like Alshire, except I missed, and I hit Kevin Hardy off of Jerome Bettis, and then fat man went running. That's another good. The body fat's good for being on a loan because you want a lot of the contestants bulk up because you got to live off of the fat reserves as much as possible. Brooks looks okay. Yes. You know what? Too. Blake Fisher. Hold on. Blake Fisher, I thought did a good job versus Brian Burns, and Titus Howard did a good job versus Kayvon Thibodeau. There was one play I was impressed with Titus because Kayvon had a good pass rush going, and Titus kicked his feet back and recovered and pushed him back to the inside. The Brevin Jordan didn't look as hot pass blocking. Okay, one more excuse for Damian. This will be because I'll make there are legitimate reasons why maybe he's not having good runs every down. And it doesn't excuse some of it when it's his fault, but they've also with the ones been experimenting with fullbacks, I like and or H-back, whatever you want to call it. But there's times when Cade Stover's out there, and I think Cade Stover is still trying to figure it out and wasn't quite sure whether to block the safety or the defensive end on one play or whoever the end man on the line of scrimmage was. And that play developed slowly because of it. You've got Brevin Jordan back there at times. You've got Hairston back there and Andrew Beck. And that hodgepodge, when you're going up against starters, that makes it a little bit murkier. It's complicated, man. Use them like Mike Allstott. Yeah. I met Mike Allstott once. I was at an awards ceremony with him. Allstott was a tough dude. He's a tough dude. When you meet him in person, he wore those huge pads, and you meet him in person, and he was an imposing guy. Don't get me wrong, but not nearly what you would think from watching what he did on television. And I respected him that much more because just in street clothes, you would never guess that this was the guy that was out there bulldozing everybody on the football field. It was crazy. I should check in on him. He took a lot of hits to the head. I didn't think it was fine. That's a false dichotomy you asked me right there. I thought it wasn't. I'm not that concerned about it, but I don't think it was fine. I think Christian Harris should make a difference, and I think that the scheme, DeMeco's scheme isn't going to change dramatically or drastically from the preseason to the regular season. I do think that some of the aggressive things they can do up front, they haven't necessarily been doing right now. There's not as much movement, with games and everything, or just some of the linebacker stunts, not full bore blitzing, but linebacker stunts that they really haven't tapped into. And that's part of it. And then Christian Harris is part of it too. But, they were a good run defense last year. Not the kind, they weren't as stout and formidable as you really want them to be, but they were a much improved run defense and statistically top 10 in a lot of ways. And that was with two guys in Sheldon Rankins and Malik Collins that were, they did not have the run stopping ability that some of these defensive tackles here do. And if you look at the way everything's composed, they've got some guys that can be head bashers. They've got some guys that are more about jetting upfield. And I think DeMeco will mix and match. I don't think it's always going to be Fatukasi and Mario Edwards out there at defensive tackle. I think there's going to be other times where you get more bulk in there, Khalil and Fatukasi at the same time, or Heinisch and Fatukasi, whichever formulation of 650 pounds you can get to. If it adds up to 650 pounds, that's your defensive tackles when you really need to stop the run. Yeah, British Brooks showed some speed that I did not expect to see out of him. That was really cool. And now he's talk about understanding the assignment. He knows when it's time to get through. I don't know if he's capable all the time of getting much more than 3 yards, but when he is supposed to get 3 yards, you feel like, all right, I can get him in there and we can at least move the ball forward a little bit. Did Kenyon Green run block well? Again, I'll go back to the last 2 preseason games. I thought both he and Blake Fisher and Juice Scruggs showed a lot of growth, and they had some really good reps. Without watching the end zone copy, I can't comment on the interior offensive line in the run game right now. It's just not. And there weren't a lot of replays last night, which is fine. Like the local broadcast, they've only got so many resources. I thought the picture quality was really good though. In the booth, that's a good booth. Between Kugler, who is like a pro, he's a pro. He's not just some guy that normally does basketball and now he's doing football just for the hell of it because that's his summer fling. And then I thought John Harris and ND are both really smart, but I thought they had a good chemistry together too. You know, it's hard, especially when you go from radio to television. You realize that you've got to parse your words a little bit. And okay, I've only got 10 seconds to make that point. And both those guys are, have spent a long time doing radio. I've tried to talk ND into coming back on radio, and I think he's just got too much of an actual life. He's a very successful business person, and he's got one son going to college and other kids on the way. So he's I'll be surprised if he chooses to go into radio, but I will give him a half Nelson a full Nelson until he submits to coming to 610 if he does go into radio. I think he's going to continue to do a lot of Texans radio stuff, Texans All Access and that. I feel like Pierce runs with low FOV. Oh, field of vision. Okay. Yeah, yeah, we're in this together. I'll do another Dameon Pierce video. Somebody accused me of just needing content when I did my Dameon Pierce video last week, which hurt. I think most people that watched that video and reacted to it were in the same boat I was, which I titled, "I'm worried about Dameon Pierce." I titled it that. And like, that was as open and honest as I could be about it. That kid is so much of all the right things. And you just saw the potential his rookie year. And there's just something that's blocking him from really tapping into this offense that I'm just genuinely worried about him because I feel like he deserves to have a long career in the NFL. I think he does everything the coaches ask him to. I think he works his butt off. Teammates and coaches just love him. He's just a beacon of energy and positivity, and it's just not clicking for him right now. And some people, a few people have asked me that whether they should just change the run scheme. Like, no, because we saw this last night. The bootlegs, the play action, a lot of that, it's very effective doing what they're doing right now. And see, this is where I'm dumb. I haven't even mentioned Joe Mixon yet. Like, that's the big unknown that's either waiting for us as a beacon of hope or looms off in the distance as like, oh, Joe Mixon actually isn't the answer. But a Joe Mixon, Cam Akers, as we've seen from preseason performance so far, a Joe Mixon, Cam Akers, British Brooks, or Cam Akers, Jawar Jordan, or Cam Akers, somebody else. I think Gumbawale, maybe, whatever, he's special teams. That I could feel good about that. So we'll figure it out. Everybody, please like, subscribe. Thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this video. Tell a friend. I'll try to do some more breakdown videos here in the next couple days. Practice is going to be, we've got the Rams practice coming up. So we'll see. We'll see what